Welcome to a new episode of SheTech from Dream to Career. If you ever wonder what's data scientist and how can I go from ops or strategy into being a scientist, this is the absolute video for you. I'm so happy that Eleanor accepted my invite to be one of my guests in this podcast because she was one of the most inspiring person in my journey and the reason why I choose to do a gig in my job and start with data analysis and data science. And without further ado, because I could talk about her a lot, let's get into it and find her story. Thank you so much for being part of this amazing podcast series of SheTech from Dream to Career. I want to start with maybe an intro on yourself and what do you do and yeah, what do you enjoy to do?
Yeah, thank you, Andrea. It's a pleasure to be on this podcast, and I really want to take a pause to thank you for taking the initiative, bringing the community together. I know it takes a lot to put yourself out there. It takes guts, so kudos to you. And a little bit about me. My name is Eleanor. I'm currently based in Amsterdam. I've lived in a couple of countries. I started my career in Toronto, Canada, as a technology consultant after I graduated from a business school. I worked there for 2 years and I pursued my master in Madrid, Spain, in data science and analytics. Afterwards, I packed my stuff from Toronto, moved to Amsterdam in the Netherlands, and currently, well, I had a few roles within Uber. Now I work at Uber, and currently I'm a scientist on the earners team.
That sounds like a lot of jams. And I'm on one side interested to understand how did your passion maybe comes for the tech file because I know you first starting more into like consulting, business strategy, and now you're more into a scientist, like a full-time job. So I'm curious to see where that actually came from.
Yeah. And maybe before I talk about my spark in tech, I just wanted to maybe rephrase because I know the word scientist can mean so many things in the real world. It's not rocket scientist, but more on data science and applied science. I would say like I got into the domain. I think I can pinpoint to like 2018, the summer. I was doing an internship in Toronto, and that was the first time I didn't really do a tech internship, but that was an environment that's more of a startup vibe. And at that internship, I was sort of doing coding for the first time. Like I've always taken smaller courses, watched videos, but that was a time and opportunity for me to actually do a project around that. And also the first time I lived in Toronto. Summer there is a great vibe. If you have been to Toronto and lived there, you know the tech community is amazing there. There are numerous meetup opportunities, and the startup atmosphere there is also quite amazing. So that summer, I basically coded for the first time in my career professionally and met a bunch of people who some of them I still keep in contact. Sometimes I lost contact, but these people actually made a big impact to me. We would go on coffee, and the kind of conversation was just not the same every time, and I felt like it's so dynamic. What really drew me to the tech community was just how supportive I think that set of people were,
Mhm.
especially. They were super supportive, and if you have an idea, they're also like a lot of the startup founders, so they understand how important it is to stay close to the people who support you and who is willing to bounce off ideas with you. So yeah, that was sort of the first time where I got a sense of like, what is it like to be in tech? But I would say before that, I've always just been really drawn to topics like that. A way to, I guess, to genuinely know your interest is just realizing you want to talk about it for a very long time and not noticing that time has passed. You also probably feel like a physical sensation of like, oh, my heart is beating really fast when people ask me questions like that. Or I just feel like I want to be around people and ask them questions and discuss and do more research. I think when you have that innate motivation to spend time to do something that could be a chore to other people, that could be a sign. So After that, I was in a large tech community at my university. I hosted the largest conference in the little town of London, Ontario. And when I was choosing my career, obviously I wanted to be as close to tech as possible, coming from a non-tech background. So in university, I specialized in finance for 2 years, and then there was a 2 year business school style. So then, technology consulting felt the most close to what I wanted. It was the intersection of, business problems, enterprise problems, along with leveraging technology solutions to help solve that at scale. And that's how I got into tech consulting.
Oh wow, that's very interesting. Know that it's definitely a way because like if you're passionate about the subject and you can see like in your face that like also like a lot of people told me like, oh, your eyes are shining when you're talking about
Yes.
a specific. So that's when you know, oh, maybe that's actually where I should go. It's not like getting stuck in something you don't
Yeah.
enjoy that much.
I think I would say it's easy, but also hard to lie to yourself. It's easy to lie to yourself because there are certain paths that society paints for you. Also at my university, I would say the traditional path outside of business school are quite clear. Not that many people pursue a career in tech. At the time, product management was also not there yet. I would say, although nowadays people pursue that quite a bit. Startup, not really. It's not super like a shining path to take. So
Mhm.
I think it's easy to lie to yourself to be like, hey, this is what I wanted, which is a mainstream path. Um, and it could also be your path. You know what? Not every people have the same interest. But it's also hard to lie to yourself because your work is such a big component to your day. You spend so much time on it. And if you feel tired, if you feel that this is not the right environment, it's evident you're gonna be unhappy really fast. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think it's that, and also the idea that maybe some people prefer to be like in the comfort zone, like keep of themselves and like what they already know instead of like trying the hard path of like pivoting. And I know that you also pivot at one point, going from even in Uber, going from operation to a data scientist. So I'm very curious to see like what are some of the biggest challenges you felt when you pivoted.
Yeah, I think there are many. Mm, they're not really the same org. And for the audience who are not super familiar with strategy and ops versus data science at a bigger tech company, usually strategy and ops, your team is looking to achieve an operational objective, hitting a KR. A KR stands for key result. And you could create a strategy around that. So when I was in operations, my team focused on electrification, and that's the job that brought me to this new country in the Netherlands. Our mission was to help Uber drivers to adopt electric vehicles and to help accelerate the electrification on the platform to become zero emission at the end of the day. So that's the mission. And exactly how you go about it, you can be very strategic 80-20. You could also, look at the headwind, the tailwind of your industry. Yeah, I think I had a lot of fun in strategy and ops. I think that was closer probably to where I come from, as in a business background. I would say the pivot to tech/science was not so easy because I think there are a lot of it's very much in depth. So in a sense, in strategy and ops, I was, if you think about a T shape, I was diving really deep into the domain of electric vehicles. The horizontal part of the T shape is sort of like your skill set. So things like business acumen, stakeholder management, communication, and so on. In tech, it feels as if your skill set needs to be really in depth, right? And at the time when I wanted to pivot, there's a really high requirement compared to what I had at that point on statistics. And, you know, majority of my team actually comes from usually one of the three backgrounds. They are economists, mathematicians, and statisticians. And then there's me. I think it was difficult from like a technical standpoint, but also there are things around, how product works that's a bit different. I'm definitely not saying every scientist work with product features. That's not true. But in my current role, I work closely with product managers. I do, experimentations, which leads decisions for product, whether we launch it, whether we iterate, what do we do about our product domain next year, but also a bunch of analysis. And it could also go in depth to modeling to understand, what are the earner strategies going onto the platform? How do they go about learning how to make more money? Like these research questions. So it could cover a lot of domains. I think the lack of really expert knowledge and practical experience was quite hard. But that's not to say it's impossible to obtain. Maybe let me just touch upon like how I did that. I think it was a combination of like mentorship and my own effort and luck, I would say. Had this chat with somebody who also had a similar pivot. So I think maybe when we talk about, common themes, we can start extracting strategies from that. I think probably the first strategy is find people who have done your path and connect with these people, right? So within the organization, I looked up people who pivoted from operations to science nowadays. I connected with them. And this person gave me an advice of, reaching out to data science managers to ask if they have problems that they have always wanted to solve, but didn't have the bandwidth to potentially create that project. The benefit of this is that you are being problem centric. You're not saying, hey, I want this. You are saying, what do you want and how can I help? And in that sense, you're aligning your interests, and that is easier for people to want to help you because you're also helping them to do something. So when I reached out to my current manager at the time, she's like, yeah, we have this project that's really understaffed, and we would love to have more people. And at this point, she has never heard about what is a short-term assignment or STA or a gig. These are Uber specific terms, but basically you are on your current team, but you're spending certain capacity on another team, sort of like being borrowed. So at the time, I split my time 50-50. I got onto this project focused on growing women earners at Uber. And that was the first time, I worked on experimentation, readout, analysis, presenting to large product and science leadership audience. So afterwards, after a while, then I had interviews because they had an open opportunity. I think I was lucky because the timeline sort of worked out. You can't really force that. So maybe extracting thinking/strategy number two, that would be you can't control timing for things, right? You don't really know when the next role is going to open up, if this org is going to have any sort of shift. But what you can do is to get yourself ready when the opportunity comes. You probably most regrets in life career-wise is that when somebody, a recruiter is reaching out to you, but you don't feel ready for a specific role or pivot. So any effort is not wasted. It's working towards that readiness when the opportunity eventually opens up. And yeah, that's sort of how I pivoted to that. And throughout the gig, I had really, really great mentorship from an amazing scientist who, is a PhD economist. She helped me to really just be patient with my questions around details of designing experiment. How do you go about, breaking down aggregate observations to insights that could lead to an iteration of the program? What does rigorous measurement mean, which is something that folks in operation definitely does, but science brings it to a whole new level. I'm very grateful for all the opportunities that came with that, and then interview came. I felt prepared because I had this experience, and eventually landed on the new team, basically.
Yeah, yeah, I know. I remember when you told me the whole journey, and I think I got a lot of inspiration because, as you said, I searched people that were doing the same transition as me. So I found you, and when I heard everything, I was like, oh, okay, so I need to prepare myself, even though the opportunity is not yet in front of me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I started also mentoring with someone, and that helped me a lot because I started understanding how you need to think, how you need to see everything, and also got my first short-term assessment in data analysis, which give me another
Yeah.
way different perspective. So I do agree with you. It's so important to, even if you don't feel yet ready, to just do some steps to see how you feel about it. How is it? What skills you need?
Yeah.
Like, are you prepared or not? Do you even like it, or is just in your mind in a way or another?
Yes.
Because you never know. So I think that like steps forward, it's always like helping you. And getting into that, I'm also very curious because now that you're a data scientist, what's your definition of what a data scientist is doing? I'm really
Oof.
curious.
That's a difficult question because at every company, you sort of call this role a bit differently. It could mean a product analyst at a company or a data scientist. And depending on what you do actually in science, you could also be like an ML scientist, so or research scientist or policy scientist. The list goes on and on. I think as a career advice, it would be very important when you want to pursue career in data science to really talk to, folks at a company with this role to understand the core definition, which is what you're doing and bringing this to the audience. In my org at Uber, they sort of combined applied science and data science into one title called scientist. The two components are very much close together. So usually this role would entail a couple of things. The first one being experimentation. It could be an A/B test. It could be synthetic control. It could be causal inference techniques. But usually we prefer doing A/B test because you have a very clear unit to randomize. I won't get into the detail, but you see certain orgs having a common strategy in solving their problems. The way we understand how feature works on users is very different than if you want to understand the effectiveness of a Super Bowl campaign. So the first component, experimentation. Second one, anything related to data analysis, whether you solve that through modeling, it could be regression, it could be clustering. The data analysis side could stem into a research project. So sometimes it could take you, a couple of days to come up with an analysis, but sometimes it could really take you weeks or months to do that research, depending on how much value and impact we think is going to be derived from that work.
Mhm.
And I would say the data analysis is a very broad domain. In order to do that, there could be automation that you need to set up, so data pipeline that you want to do. It could also mean that you want to look into machine learning techniques. So I think the list goes on and on. And maybe lastly, setting up data foundation. It really depends on a team. I would say a mature team, they probably have that data definition and foundation figured out. Um, if I go back to, the project I worked on with Women Earner, even the definition of gender was quite a difficult task. So creating that logic to derive um, and reporting, that's still a big part of it. So these are the three things that usually everybody does, and depending on your seniority, your expertise, you could be working on really state of the art modeling. So this is not coming from my own experience, but just watching, weekly we do DS Jams, which are basically platforms for people to share their work and knowledge. There are folks doing amazing work with things. So for example, in a last couple of years, there is an investment into multi-arm bandit, the technique that would allow you to quickly experiment different variant of the same thing. And that would sometimes yield really amazing and surprising business impact. So you could dive into, the really deep end of modeling. It could be deep learning, it could be, state of the art stuff. I wouldn't say everybody does that, so it's not expected that you would know. Um, but yeah, this is something I think sky's the limit. If you have a good business case conviction on why this would actually create business value, it's usually very encouraged to, bring your own project and have a science lab project.
Yeah, totally understand. And now that we have your definition of how you see data scientists, what do you think are the most essential skills to make you successful in being a data scientist?
Yeah, so maybe if we talk about, the corresponding skill set to the task that we have previously talked about, with experimentation, your skill set would be, understanding of how A/B test works, how to read the result, analyze the result. So some statistical knowledge needs to be there. And a caveat here is that not every company's DS does experimentation. So always a good idea to, double check the job posting, to talk to the people to see that. I've heard a really good book around experimentation that is sort of one of the Bibles out there is the Trustworthy Online Controlled Experiments. So if you don't have any experimentation, experience, I reckon that you can pick this up from a theoretical perspective pretty quickly. I would say when I try to learn things versus when I actually applying things over and over again, it doesn't get super repetitive. You know what? The real world is super messy. You have dependencies that you need to design experiment with. You might have features that are just, having networking effect that you need to adjust. So by reading the book is not enough. So I would encourage having that experience. It's not easy to get that experience, I would say. Some courses might enable you to, play around with platform data, but you truly need user data on a platform to be able to practice experimentation. So maybe a way is to see if your company does that. And if so, get in touch with people to be like, hey, can I shadow your work? Can I just listen to a presentation that you do? That could be helpful. The second task that we talked about is around data analysis. And I think that is a very, very broad concept. It could include, machine learning modeling in order to derive prediction or insight. But I think the top skill sets include Python. It's very popular in the industry. Maybe years ago, you could have a debate between Python or R, but I see Python being used a lot more nowadays. You would also probably want to be intermediate level with SQL. In that sense, if you don't know SQL at all, it's not an intimidating, language to pick up. There are websites that I really like and videos out there that, get you from only knowing select from to, pretty intermediate level, which is good enough for most jobs. And I would say lastly, data visualization. Folks at Uber tend to use either Tableau or Looker. I've also seen a lot of people using Gshi because that's easy for automation. So that could be useful. And lastly, having some experience with, automation, I think that shows that you are looking for ways to improve efficiency, whether that being your actual reporting or, when you are completing a task, you're thinking about ways to make things faster, easier, less time consuming for yourself. So maybe a recap here. Under data analysis, we talked about Python, SQL, data visualization, and automation understanding. And the last bucket is non-technical, but extremely important skill set in order to be successful and grow, progress in this career, which is communication. Communication encompasses many parts. It could be a presentation to your peers, which you need to dive into technical details. It could be a 10-minute presentation to leadership for them to understand the impact of your project. It could be a written form for everybody out there to, in a one-page TLDR to understand the problem, context, methodology, impact, and next step. So this is surely not an unimportant skill set. I would say it's very important, especially if you want to grow, to a more senior level in science.
Yeah, definitely. I can see those skills. And I think those are the one that I focus the most in my mentoring because I was trying, okay, how do you acquire that? And trying, like, I think also I shadow some experimented in order to understand how that works because it's different if you like see the data and understand how user react because like it's different than just like simulating something on your computer maybe. So I think yeah, shadowing and like having someone to show you a bit, it's definitely a great tool. And I think people are very open to just talk to you and explain what's going on if you just ask.
The
And
hardest part is to ask.
yeah, exactly. It's like to give that courage in you to actually put that question. But
Yeah.
I always love to say that if you're not trying, the answer is already no. So the worst it can happen if you ask is no. So in a
Yes.
way you're losing if you don't ask.
Exactly. That's like an expected function.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly what you said.
And now I know that you also worked across multiple male-dominated spacing from consultancy, tech, data. I'm curious to see, have you noticed any changes recently in this world tech? And also I'm curious to see what challenges you had and how did you manage to maybe tackle them?
Yeah. I would say the industries are definitely evolving. Um, to at certain level, I wouldn't even say it's male dominated, but I would say, a lack of female presence in the very top leadership level is a challenge that many companies are facing. The way I say challenge, probably it just means that, it's a challenge for all women to feel that there is a role model that they can look up to know that this is possible, but also having a different perspective into looking at things, right? So I would say it's evolving in a sense that you see relatively more balanced, composition at entry or maybe even middle level. I feel really lucky because my manager currently is a female, so I, have that data point to say, hey, it is possible, and she's also a new mother, which I admire very much. And if I also look at, the VP level, the VP engineering is also a woman, so you definitely see the change happening. I think it would take time, from decades ago where women in STEM is not really a thing to now folks not necessarily following the traditional path to education. You can learn so many things on your own. I think that decentralizes resources and help everybody to feel the ability to create the path that they want for themselves. So I think first of all, this is something that's definitely changing. For me, what is challenging? I I would say like finding that mentorship is not easy. Um, Female mentorship takes, both sides. It's not something that if you want to get, you can just get, and it takes actual time. If you watch a YouTube video, if you create a YouTube video, or if you create a podcast like what we're doing right now, many people out there could watch that, but mentorship tends to be one-on-one style, so it is a lot of time commitment. So even though the industry is evolving, I find that if I want guidance at a very, very specific, area, sometimes it's not easy to find that person. That being said, I think sometimes it's about, your time putting into research and to reach out to the right person. And I'm sure like there are like micro level struggle that we all face every day. They're like subtle cues in communication that sometimes might make female feel a bit sad compared to other people because we take things in a different way. Um, I think the environment nowadays is changing, but I would encourage everybody to be just a bit more mindful when communicating, especially amongst women. We need to encourage each other and sort of, assume that it's probably not a good idea to always assume, but I like to assume women in leadership position. I would like to assume that they want to take on leadership position on a project. I would want to assume that she has some great points to bring up in a meeting, but just nobody really asked them. So the change could come from us. The industry is changing, but just be a part of the force to make it better.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree. And I also saw a bit of a change now, at least in junior level. I feel like it's getting to be like more equal sided. But as you said, like we need to wait a bit to grow up and manage to get upward. But yeah, what I did saw some women, so I was very happy to have them as my role model in a way or another. And I'm also curious maybe to go a bit on an advice perspective and to see what advice will you give young women or girls that are very curious about tech and data science, and what should they do? Maybe there are some skills, video they should look,
Mm.
or anything else in your mind.
There are so many things. I think it's definitely hard to just say a few things because sometimes looking back to my previous self, there are many pointers, but also I'm happy with the way things turn out. I would say, first of all, trust your instinct. Nobody knows yourself better than yourself. You can have your parents saying, "Oh, you are really bad at math," which I have had in my, younger years, where, people recognize that, hey, you really struggle with specific concepts and math questions, and that sort of discouraged me to step out to be like, hey, this is actually what I want to do at an earlier stage. So that point maybe came a bit later. Sometimes I still get a little intimidated when I hear, folks be like, oh, I started coding when I'm like 11 years old. The first line I developed my first application at like the age of 8. You don't stop hearing about these stories, but there's no way to go back then. But if I could, I would tell myself that it is possible for you to be that person. And people can say all sorts of things about you. People can assume a lot of things about you, about your capabilities, but you need to be the person giving yourself the trust
Yeah,
first.
I definitely agree with that because I feel like even as women, we tend to doubt our skills and skill set in general more because like even if you're looking at statistics, usually a woman needs 8 out of 10 skills to apply for a job, while a man needs 3 out of 10, if I'm correct.
Yes.
I feel like it's such a different way of how we see ourselves. So maybe we need to start to, I don't know, believe more that we can do it. And I also
Yes.
similar experience that not on the tech side, but like on the English perspective, that everyone was like, "Oh, you're not good at it, and you're never going to make it." And now I'm studying, working, whatever you call it
Yes.
in English. So it's like it's more like not allowing yourself to be, "Oh, they said that I'm not good, so I will stay not good." No, prove them wrong. Do it for
Yes. Exactly. I think the perspective doesn't mean reality, right? It could be your own thoughts, it could be other people's thoughts, it could be your teacher, it could be your parents, but that doesn't mean reality. I think the first mindset is extremely important. The second thing is the skill to learn. It is a skill. It is a skill to be able to pick up things. So even if you don't have a very specific skill set or knowledge with tooling, try to train yourself thinking, like now I've graduated from both of my undergrad and master for a while. It's a skill set to be a student, to be able to take knowledge, synthesize, process it, applying it. Try to keep that up. because at work sometimes maybe you're learning, maybe in a week you are just outputting, you're producing, but you're not learning. Sometimes it's a part of the job, but making sure that you have that in either in your work or outside of your work. You could have a mini challenge over 3 weekends to build something, but keep that learning skill very sharp would help you to be able to have that confidence and ability to pick up anything, even if you want a pivot.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I agree. It's like it's a never-ending skill that you need to have because like the especially in tech, everything is changing constantly. So you need to keep up in a way or another. And I have one last question, which I love to ask everyone, which is if you could give only one piece of advice to your younger self, what would that be?
Younger self, like really, really young,
Yeah, really, really young.
um, I would say your understanding of the world, what you think you can do, where you're going to be, it's going to be just so much more. If I think about myself, maybe in elementary school, I would have never imagined that I've lived in so many countries, um, the ability that you can have to create the life that you want is just so much more than what you think. What you think, you might think this is the reality, this is the world, but just go out there. You have the ability to take control of your life, to create a life that you respect, you admire, you enjoy, that brings happiness to you. That's all possible. I think when I was younger, maybe I didn't think through my entire life, and I had a linear path in mind just because my environment is extremely important. Surround yourself with folks who you want to become, who brings you the sense of safety, the sense of comfort. Um, that's super important. So whatever you think you can do, double, triple, quadruple that, because you can do that.
Definitely. I think that's a great piece of advice because now if I'm imagining my small self, yeah, I think it's always dream bigger because you can touch that even if it seems like impossible, nothing is impossible. You just need to
You just don't know yet,
yeah,
right? Maybe you don't
exactly.
have enough data points to confirm that this is possible.
Yeah.
It's a Monte Carlos. There's so many paths out there. You never know what the range is, and some really small decisions can change the trajectory of your life. So just wait until the podcast, not podcast, but the episode expands as the show of your life goes on. But do put in the work. Don't let other people be the main character of your own show. Take control. If you have that thought of doing something, really go do that. Prove it to yourself that what we have talked about. You can have that ability to learn, your skill set in learning, your ability to feel okay when reaching out to a stranger and asking for help. This is the community. If nobody asks for help, then there's no purpose of a community exists. So
Yeah.
reach
I
out,
agree.
stay connected.
Yeah. Totally, totally agree. Well, Eleanor, thank you so much for all your responses. As always, an inspiration for me and I think for a lot of people. And yeah, thank you so much.